We will start in a minute. Hi all. Um, okay. The live stream also started. Okay, we can then start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace and blessings be upon you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, today we are going to be covering the final installment of our series within uh, in the discussion of nature and its true nature. And indeed, we have been discussing for the past 4 weeks, and we have been discussing different ways that people can go into unbelief or ways they can try to reject the idea of a creator. And of course, again, it's mainly the 23rd Flash in the Flashes collection from the Risale Inner collection, and there are multiple arguments there. We only were able to cover a subset of them, but regardless, hopefully this is a nice preview and a good encouragement, hopefully for the rest of you to um, go and read that book. Which is a complete book in terms of refuting these 3 ways. Again, just to recap, in the discussion was that in the universe, there are 3 ways that one can try to assume, try to assert, and um, try to see the way things are created or things come into existence, right? I mean, created is actually without the thought of creation. The one way is causes creating them, right? Like since there is sun and there is water and there is soil, earth, you have the seed growing, for example, like the causes having some sort of a creative power into things. This is one way to assume. The second way is that things from themselves, right? I mean, things, the cells is like a self-organizing thing and it's a self-determining thing. But then again, um, we for the first way we talked about how causes are not animate, are not knowledgeable, do not have any power or will or any idea of what's going on. In the second way, we talked about things being connected to the whole universe, that if they try to form themselves, they will need to dominate everything and be dominated by everything at the same time. Again, we talked about its being not really feasible. The third way, again, the nature creates it, it's natural. Again, we talked about this with with, for example, the example of someone seeing a book in a palace that describes the palace and assumes that the palace is built by that book. Similarly, we talked about nature and natural laws and things around us. They are a description of what we see in the universe, but they by themselves as a law do not have any power to execute things, power to run things, power or will or purpose to affect any of these things. So this week we will conclude by talking first about the fourth way, which is God created everything. There is one creator who created everything. And that is what we will spend some time. And then we can, if we have time, we will finish with some more discussion on like causes and their relationship with the creation, if they have any real effect uh, at all in the universe. So our speakers today will be um, Dr. Turner again from UK, and Brother Samettin again from UK. We've been doing back and forth with every other session. Brother Samettin has been joining us, and that's great. I think for continuity, it has been also very helpful for us. And we will have our volunteer contributors who we shared with these slides beforehand. And and again, feel free to let us know if you would like to also volunteer in future sessions, and we will try to get some more feedback also from the larger audience through volunteer contributors, inshallah. I'm Mustafa Akbulut, and I will be moderating this session, this final session as well. And next week, hopefully, we will go into another topic. Okay, inshallah, I'll read this part, which is about again the fourth way, and then we can discuss this probably for the first 20 minutes or so, I imagine, before we go into the next part. And I'll read through it, and then I'll let our speakers take their turns. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is from within the third way, after second impossibility of the 23rd flash. This question is asked. If you ask, if such extraordinary impossibilities and insurmountable difficulties occur when beings are attributed to nature, how are those difficulties removed when they're attributed to the single and eternally bestowed one? And how is the difficult impossibility transformed into that easy necessity? So this is a question that might come to mind, where we talked about all these impossibilities of other things creating things. But how come do we say that the fourth way, which is the God created everything, um, one creator who created everything, how is that any easier? How is that possible among all these? The answer we saw in the first impossibility of the third way that the manifestation of the sun's reflection displays its radiance and effect through miniature imaginary suns with complete ease and lack of trouble in everything from the minutest inanimate particle to the surface of the vastest ocean. If each particle's relationship with the sun is severed, it becomes necessary to accept that the external existence of an actual sun could subsist with a difficulty at the level of impossibility in each of those minute particles. Similarly, if each being is ascribed directly to the single eternally besought one, everything Wahid Ahad. Everything necessary for each being can be conveyed to it through a connection and manifestation with an ease and facility that is at the level of necessity. If the connection is severed, and each being reverts from its position as an official to being without duties, and is left to nature and its own devices, it becomes necessary to suppose that, with 100,000 difficulties and obstacles that reach the degree of impossibility, blind nature possesses within it the power and wisdom to create and administer the universe so that it might bring into existence the wonderful machine of the being of an animate creature like a fly, which is a tiny index of the universe. This is impossible not just once, but thousands of times over. In short, just as it is impossible and precluded for the necessarily existent one to have any partner or like in respect of his essence, so too is the interference of others in his dominicality, his lordship, his running things, and in his creation of beings impossible and precluded. Um, so I'd like to stop here and inshallah seek comments from our speakers. Um, Kulun Hocam, would you like to start us off with this fourth way?
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the key here is the reality of interdependence. I think what makes it difficult for causes to create and what makes it easy for one creator, Allah in other words, to create, all hinges on the reality of interdependence. And I think that this reality, when it's analyzed as impartially as possible, shows us that the ability to create a single atom is predicated on the ability to create all of the atoms in existence. Because we're talking about discrete parts, particulars that are also the components of a single whole, which is the universe. So if we analogize, maybe use an example of the human body, we see that there is a single human body, and immediately we see that there is a unique singular whole, which is conceptually divisible into component parts, discrete component parts. So we have different limbs, members, and organs which make up the body. And we see that each limb, each member, each organ is itself divisible into discrete parts, the component parts that make up the limb or the member or that organ. So the body, I think, can be likened to the universe, and the component parts which make it up may be likened to different realms or different worlds. And Ustad Nursi does this on occasion. Each of the component parts of those limbs, those members and those organs, in turn, has its own component parts. And so this setup of worlds within worlds gives us conceptually a set of concentric circles. You have circles within circles, each of them fractal, each of them containing numerous other wholes, numerous other worlds, each with their own subsystems, right down to the cell, and from the cell right down to the atom, and from the atom further down into that shadowy subatomic world that we call energy in motion. Now, since each large world contains many worlds within itself, and since each of those smaller worlds is further divisible into numerous other worlds, it is, to me anyway, it's clear that there is a firm and distinct relationship between the very largest world and the very smallest, because they all interact, they all intersect, and they all interrelate. They're all part of the same overarching whole, which we call the universe or the cosmos. And everything from the cosmos as a whole down to each and every component atom, these are all inextricably linked and irrevocably interrelated. And as a consequence, they are interdependent. And because everything is interdependent, actually, nothing can be truly independent. As you said, Mustafa, nothing can dominate and be dominated at the same time. So if everything is interdependent, nothing can be truly independent. And if nothing can be truly independent, it must therefore be dependent, whether it's each of the universe's component parts or, and this is the important conclusion, if it's the cosmos itself. And once you see that the cosmos itself, as a single unique whole, is dependent, then the question is posed, dependent on what? Dependent on whom? And this is the answer, the question that these three propositions are trying to answer.
So, I mean, maybe, I'll try to say this, but there is dependence, but are you saying like the reason that we cannot say, for example, this specific thing is dependent on the next in the chain of causes is because it is also as dependent to the rest of the universe, like its cause, or it's also like as artful or more artful even than its cause? And how should we break that chain, like the dependence? How are these directly dependent on the creator rather than depending on the next in chain of commands? How should we establish that?
So that means we need to go through the three propositions, doesn't it? You know,
Maybe.
again, yeah. So the first one is causes create. The second one is things form themselves. And the third one is nature creates. These are all bankrupt attempts to ascertain the answer to the question I just asked. Upon what is the cosmos dependent? And that dependence is not it's not a dependence that is past temporal. It is present, and it is here in the here and now, because creation is ongoing and it's in flux, and things are coming into existence and leaving existence all the time. So that dependence is a very present dependence. And if you understand the cosmos as a whole as being one unit, the question is, at this very moment in time, upon whom is the cosmos dependent? This is why I said that we have to enter the subject through the question of interdependence. Is that
Yeah.
interdependence real? Are things really dependent on other things, given that they themselves have been brought into existence? Or is that interdependence only nominal and surface deep? In other words, superficial. It's a necessary fiction, perhaps, for us to understand what dependence is. Something cannot be, as you said, dominant and dominated in actual fact at the same time. Even though, this is maybe belied by things that we see, like the stones holding each other in the freestanding dome. In actual fact, for someone to be truly um, dependent or truly depended upon, you can't be both. One of them has to be apparent only.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. Thanks. Samettin abi, any other comments? And I would like to ask you, um, is also an example or like explanation of this last sentence as well, in terms of like what does it mean to, because like it is probably easy to accept one creator as one that to be worshipped, but accepting one creator who actually has the effect over everything at the same time, affecting things directly, and not only interfering time to time type of a thing, that is a whole different understanding, in my opinion. And like, how should we really understand this? Because the first one is probably easy to understand, and second one is what we are really talking about here. Any thoughts? And also, of course, this part and this example that is given that about the creator of the universe is the solution to our problems.
Uh, may I ask our volunteer participants to join in now, because I couldn't really, say what is apparent in the text more than that. Maybe at the moment I'm not very focused, but if other volunteer participants help me, I would be very grateful.
Sure. From our, I guess, my question, and I can start calling on people like Harun abi, Fatih abi, Ali abi. But I guess my question here was, um, like, how should we understand uh, God also being one in His Rububiyah, Allah being one in His Rububiyah, in His dominicality, in His lordship, and not only a oneness in His uluhiyah, or in His um, one that is worthy of worship. Any insights that we can get? Maybe Harun abi, would you like to jump in, or Fatih abi, or Ali abi even?
Maybe let me start
Or you can
telling a
start,
couple of
Samet abi,
words.
so that
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
warm up our
Yeah.
volunteers.
Let's start with my snowball, and then I wish they will join me, inshallah. It's like, in another example, I remember Ustad gave it's the example of sun. He's actually giving this example in the previous page, but in a different way here, as you mentioned. That's why I actually wanted to say here. You know, the sun itself, with its own existence, it's a source of light in the realm of the, you know, causal existence. It's not the, you know, actual source, but we see it as the source of light. And with its own, you know, it just stays over there, and with its, you know, full functioning of, you know, sending its light, it doesn't really, you know, necessitates for it to divide its power of, you know, lightning, in order to be able to send its light to different individuals. Like on the earth, uh, every single thing getting benefit from, you know, light from the sun, and sun has no, there's no interference in between. And sun, with its full power, can do it, and without any time boundaries, and the boundary of the place as well. So it can do it, and it's a single source of light. But for example, in the realm of the flowers, sun is reflected as colors, but this doesn't stop sun to be reflected as, let's say, um, being reflected on small fragments, like the whole shape of it and the light. Also, it doesn't stop it from, you know, sending its heat, you know, to the level of, you know, required level for the living beings. And at the same time, it doesn't stop it to to be reflected on the scene of the heaven of the world, as a, you know, beautiful shape. And it's also bringing us the daylight. So all those things, in the actual, you know, can be resembled to the different attributes of the creator, of one creator. So it doesn't stop Allah to treat every single living being with their all sustenance, send them all their foods and whatever they need to stay alive. And at the same time, this never stops Allah to, you know, control the whole universe, in order the world to stay in its own pace, and you know, required, you know, distance from the sun, and the rest of it. I mean, whatever happens in the world and in the whole universe, um, I mean, nothing can stop, uh, you know, Allah to interfere others. So this is actually just
Yeah, that's
you know.
great. No, yeah, that's great because the sun example really helps out because I think probably one fallacy that we probably fall in is that we try to compare God to human beings in terms of our capacity. We are limited in our capacity to hear and do things. We are really limited, and if we focus on one thing, we can miss on another thing. And we do need all these intermediaries to get our things done. But I guess the sun example really helps us here in the sense that it doesn't really need any intermediaries when shining, as you said, onto a flower versus the surface of the ocean versus a tiny fragment of glass. So in that sense, it's really a good example in showing that God really is not limited with the same or similar limits that we assume for ourselves, because it doesn't need to be. Everything can be in His control at the same time, and they are. I think that is a great um, example also through Sun. Thanks a lot. Kolun Hocam, any further insights onto this? And
No, I think that Husamuddin, it's a difficult subject, and I think he explained it extremely well. I can't better that, or the only thing I can say is that what we're asking of causes is exactly the same as we would ask from the one creator of all things, that is to be present with everything and yet to be distant at the same time. And we know through the mystery of divine unity, and the sun example is a very good one, because the sun is distant from all things and yet its light and heat are present with all things at the same time. So we're asking that from a cause. And the first three propositions, we saw that they have been shown one after the other to be unequivocally unviable and therefore rejectable, because a cause is also by default an effect. It's by default something upon which existence has been given, and it can't at that same time be a bestower of existence upon something else. So, as we've shown through the mystery of interdependence, in order to create one atom, you must, in theory, be able to create all of the other atoms and be present with them, and be present with that with which the atom has relationships. And those relationships are uncountable.
yeah.
So, in order to create a single atom, you must also be able to create the whole universe. And now, are you going to say to me that instead of one singular, unique being who creates the whole universe with no problem, you're going to give that onus and that responsibility to a single, dependent, created, limited, restricted, finite, blind, impotent, deaf, and unseeing atom cause? Which one is more credible? Because that's the very least that you would expect from the kind of power and knowledge that it takes to create a single atom. So a blind and deaf and impotent cause could never be the possessor of the kind of attributes of perfection that are needed to create something. That's just the first proposition. Cause is creating, before we even get to the other two.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's great. Thanks. I mean, I guess, some of these might seem, for people to be, repetition or repeating similar things, but I think they are important to instill in ourselves, as you said, because otherwise we are all through like education and everything around us, even when people speak about things, right? Like, snow or something, and there is that veil of habit, and it's really, it takes time and effort to really eh, pull that apart and to see the causal causes. um Harun Abi has raised his hand. Go ahead, Harun Abi. Would you like to add something to this?
Selamünaleyküm.
Alaikum salam.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I want to just draw attention to the relationship between Allah's, God's actions that we see, what we call verbs, right? In English, like feel, actions, let me say. Actions are the very small tasks that we see clearly with our eyes, like shining of the sun, right? Sun shines, so it's a verb. Sun gives heat, it's a verb. So we all see that. The thing is, the most obvious is the most difficult to attribute to Allah because of our nonsense understanding of relationship existing every day. However, on the contrary, when we look at more abstract way, like somebody asks, who created heavens and the worlds, immediately all of us, all believers, even non-believers, will say somebody or something created, because it would be, just deferring or getting rid of our intellectual capabilities to say that there is no creator at all. So this is the most abstract part, but we are more clear on this to attribute these huge, giant, macro level creation or existence to God in any tradition, I would say. Again, coming backwards, so we see this actions. Actually, we know actions emerge from the names of Allah. So it goes a little bit more abstract. Like if there's a shining, there should be a shiner. So, and then we understand shining is beautiful. So we go deeper, more abstract. So it's kind of this shiner has intention, has some beauty behind. And even it goes more abstract, right? What we call shu'un ilahiye, Allah's states to translate. So this state is very abstract. It is very close to the self of Allah. But of course, we can never think about the self of Allah, because it is whatever we think about. It's not Him, because He's laysa kamislihi. So God does not resemble any of the creation. But as we go backwards to the action level that I said, so we said states, attributes, names, and actions, from the most abstract to the most visible. Let's say everything, anything that we see. So things get closer to us, but we get further to attribute anything we see to the uniqueness or to the oneness of the creator. I think this is where the neglect comes. I mean, if we are attributing existence of a single creator, then we should really think what it requires, because a single creator has to have also the dominicality itself at anything. It should be able to work with tons of names. It should be able to work, or he should be able to work with millions of actions simultaneously. Otherwise, this for existence, a second agency would make all this beautiful order into collapse. Mm-hmm. And also anything, as Colin Hocam and Hüsamettin mentioned, all the interdependent relationships that we observe would not be able to tolerate each other in any case. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, these are subtle points that we need to really understand well, to know God with His names and attributes. And again, it was great that you drawn our attention to this chain and also the names and attributes of the Creator that it takes to run the universe. Thanks a lot. So I would like to go into the second part, which is more of a summary, I can say, about like the nature's role in the universe, because I wanted to also honor the title of our series, which is Nature's True Nature, and this part really sums it all up quite well. And if you allow, I'll try to read this, and then we can have a short discussion on like why these things have been chosen, these statements, and we can follow through about after that. So, and this is actually this part doesn't come right after the previous part in the original text. This comes pretty much towards the end of the third way in the original texts, in the 23rd flash, nature, the treatise on nature. In short, the imaginary and insubstantial thing that naturalists call nature, if it has an external reality, can at the very most be a work of art. It cannot be the artist. It is an embroidery and cannot be the embroiderer. It is a set of decrees. It cannot be the issuer of the decrees. It is a body of the laws of creation and cannot be the lawgiver. It is but a created screen to the dignity of God and cannot be the creator. It is passive and created and cannot be a creative maker. It is a law, not a power, and cannot possess power. It is the recipient and cannot be the source. So this is a definition of nature, like the natural laws, you can say it, or natural things. Things have a nature. Fire burns, for example, of this nature. And one interesting point that I wanted to draw attention with the help of a brother was that this statement was interesting, and I would like to actually ask. This is actually could get a bit deep, but it's actually interesting to probably shatter all these imaginary partners to God. And that statement is, if it had an external reality. So it is nature isn't really proven to have an external reality, or we cannot really assume it as an external reality or having some sort of a. But how should we understand this, and also how should we understand these parts here? Colin Najam, would you like to uh, comment on this and these?
It depends how we're understanding nature. If nature is the laws of nature, is that what you mean?
Laws of nature, but should we also understand this as the nature of things?
Well, the nature of things,
can
I
we?
thought we already showed that the nature of things is basically what you're saying is that things are able to determine their own trajectories because they have some kind of innate quality which allows them to do that. And I think that is reducible to causality at the end of the day. So I think it can be dismissed on those grounds. But as for the laws of nature, the laws of nature have no external existence because they are abstracted from our observation of things which happen time and time again. So we observe that when you drop the apple, it falls to the ground. And therefore you're able to, from that abstraction, you're able to posit a certain law, which is basically a description of what happens. Those laws have no external existence, but it says here external reality. It has an external reality in as much as you can talk about it. So it has a kind of reality. It's the same as darkness. Darkness has a reality, but it doesn't have an external existence. It's not a concrete thing which has been created, with an external being. But to have an external reality, I think it means that you can talk about it. Is the difference here between wujud khariji and haqiqat khariji? In the sorry to go into terminology, but I'm trying to understand the original and how this has been translated, because nature doesn't have an external existence, but it has an external reality. And I think this is what Ustad is saying. It's saying that imaginary and insubstantial thing that naturalists call nature, if it has an external reality, can at the very most be, and then because he goes here through this whole list of things of what nature is, it's a work of art, it's not the artist. And then he goes through the whole list, which is amazing, actually. It's showing us that, that it doesn't have agency. It's passive and it's receptive.
So I'm trying to also find the original text so that we can.
It's because people give these laws agency that they're able to imagine, and it is purely imaginary, that laws can somehow create. I mean, Ustad talks about going through a palace and finding the index or the inventory of all of the artifacts in the palace, and then imagining that the inventory itself is the creator. I mean, it's bizarre. It's because we don't think about things, We make all of these crazy fallacies, such as the fallacy of reification when we talk about Mother Nature, as if nature is a thing or a person. And someone was saying even it shouldn't be Mother Nature, it should be Sister Nature, because we are brothers and sisters to it. But, these are, if we think about them, we see how ridiculous and bankrupt they are. To think that a law which has no external existence can be responsible for anything. A law itself is a conclusion that we reach after we have witnessed something on numerous occasions, and we have concluded that, yes, this is how it happens. Now, how something happens is not responsible for it happening.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. I agree.
I think these are the distinctions he's making here on every single level here. That which is happening is not causing it to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's being there doesn't mean that it has also the effect, or I mean, I guess when one is like, it's a law, not a power, and cannot possess power. I guess we see this in a lot of places when we see a law of nature. It doesn't mean that it possesses the power to execute that law. It's, I guess, the case with any law, I imagine, right? I mean, it wouldn't. And just to, I found the original is called Hakikati Harji.
Yeah,
So,
that's it. Yeah, if it has he's surmising, even if it has an external reality, which we can argue that it does, because you can talk about it, it doesn't have an external existence, and therefore it doesn't have any kind of agency, imaginary or otherwise.
yeah.
It's like your beautiful snow photograph. It's a photograph. It's not the photographer.
Correct.
It's, the analogy is the same. It's a photograph of snow, of trees under snow. It didn't take the photograph. It is the photograph.
It is being affected with the rest of the things. It doesn't mean that, I guess, since it is a summary of some of these things, it doesn't mean that it is affecting all these things, I imagine, right? Like
It's completely passive, it is a work of art. It's not the artist.
Yeah.
It's, it's a pattern. It's not the one who creates the patterns, and so on.
Yeah. And I guess if we think about like, why then do we have a thing called nature? Like, why do we have these laws? Maybe we can touch upon that a little bit as well, in the sense that, like, what is the purpose of having laws? If like, does it, like, do they, like, bind God? It shouldn't, right? It doesn't. But is it because of, I mean, is it another veil for us, so that we don't attribute that are things that are not against, to preserve the dignity of the creator against false accusations? Maybe Samet and Abi, would you like to also
Yeah,
join
I
in the
think
discussion?
it's a very good question. Thank you for asking. And Colin Hocam's points are really open this bit. We have covered maybe a couple of months ago human eye, Anna, and I actually found Ustad, he himself mentions in Mesnevi Nuriya, and here it's very clear there's a very good resemblance between Anna and the nature, and the way how Anna itself, our feeling of self is similar to nature. The main difference is obviously we have our consciousness, and we can attribute different we can attribute qualities to our own selves and to others. And like our own self, the nature itself has no independent existence, and it's only an imaginary existence, and it has a reality, external reality, in the conditions that Ustad is mentioning until each title here. And as coming to your question, I think it's similar again in the case of the mankind, and we are meant to understand first of all our own existence, and with our with the attributes that are actually entitled in a certain time in this worldly life by creator, by because we have lots of different sifats, different attributes, but they has to have some sort of connection with our environment. So if we are created in somewhere there is nothing apart from us, how could we make connection with the without seeing the creation of the creator? How we can how we could make the connection, and we could understand the correspondences in our own self. I think tabi'a, the nature, the so-called nature, I mean the whole universe, the system of the universe, or the laws, and with its own components, has a direct relationship with our own self in order to again to reach the higher reality of our own self and the creator of the nature. I think I think there's a great element in that, but I wouldn't really explain. If someone helped me, I would be happy. Or if I said anything wrong, please correct me.
No, that's great. That was great. Thanks a lot for the explanation. One of our contributors.
Can I share something?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Perhaps it can help us to think about external reality. I'd like to share a few sentences from the 29th word, which is about the existence of angels. A few sentences only. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. You should never think that the laws in force in this creation are sufficient for the universe to be alive. You should never think that the laws in force in this creation are sufficient for the universe to be alive, because those governing laws are insubstantial commands. They are imaginary principles. They may be considered as non-existent. If there were no absolutely obedient creatures called angels to represent them, make them apparent, and take their reins into their own hands, those laws could not be defined as existent, nor be represented as having a particular identity, nor be an external reality, whereas life is an external reality, and an imaginary command cannot sustain an external reality. Perhaps in this sentence you asked with if, perhaps I'm not sure, indicates the angels. Perhaps we should remember the angels' duties about to represent the laws or to bear the laws. Only and their bearings we can make the relation with the laws. I think Ustad is indicating here to external for external reality should be taught the existence of angels. I think as far as I'm concerned. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's great conclusion, Jazakallah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, in this, where does the angels play? But it is the representing that external reality of what these laws are creating, and I guess connecting that to what Samettin Abi has been saying is about, probably we can say that all these laws are there to represent the work of or the show us the work of the creator, so that we can make these connections, and all those things are doing their duties by their having and doing their duties to the letter. They practically represent a perfect worship to the creator. And what represents or presents these perfect worship to the Creator is angels, the angels who represent these laws, these concepts, these creation, and but yeah, in that sense, it's actually a great connection in all these things. Thank you very much. Any other comments from anyone before I jump on to the final part of the? There's a couple more paragraphs I was going to read, but if there are more comments here, we can also stay here.
I have a comment about the last comment on angels.
Yeah, sure.
Angels is one of Ustad Nursi's generally undiscovered gems. The way that he frames his understanding of angels is, I think, unique in Muslim theology, and it's something I'm very, very interested in. And inshallah, we'll be writing on it, hopefully, in the next year or so. But ultimately, causality needs to be conceptually replaced with the notion of angelic presence. We can understand why causes and why beings appear to be animate, appear to be full of knowledge, appear to be full of direction, full of will. All of these things that we look at in creation, and from that we conclude that the creation is purposeful, is down to angelic presence. And this hasn't really been analyzed in the way that it should be analyzed, because people are scared to talk about angels. I found that out on several occasions whenever I've tried to broach the subject and tried to suggest that we should be understanding cause and effect in terms of angelic presence. It's as though I've been speaking Chinese, and people just haven't been able to take it on board, because we forgot how to talk about angels. Get the idea that you see from paintings that angels are like fat little babies with wings, flying around with arrows, with a bow and arrow. So, and in the West, of course, for 500 years, there has been no discussion of angels, even in Catholic theology, where they have a very robust and very rich angelology, medievally speaking. We don't have that. Even though our scholars, those who really understand angels, like Ustad Nursi does, see this amazing correspondence between cause and effect and angelic presence. I'm sorry I took up a lot of time.
No, that's great.
I thought that was a wonderful comment and very brilliantly perceived by, I can't remember who it was, who made that comment, but it's a very, very good link.
Brother Ali was, yes.
Yeah, maybe we should look further into angels ourselves on Sundays. Who knows?
Yeah, and maybe one of the future sessions, it gives an idea for one of the future sessions too. Inshallah. Okay, so and this part, there's like a couple slides, well, 3. I'll read through this. We are running out of time, but this is a part again concluding this, and after this, maybe we can also have like final thoughts and then finish. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. To conclude, and this is the conclusion of the whole part of the whole treatise. Of course, there's an ending part, and there are some other questions which I encourage our audience to read for themselves, to reduce any doubts here and there. So as a collection, as a whole, it's great. I'll read this conclusion part of it, and then we can talk a bit. And again, of course, we won't make it justice, give it the justice by just covering these 5 sessions, but this is how much we can make this with the limited amount of time. To conclude, since beings exist, and as was stated at the beginning of this treatise, reason cannot think of a way to explain the existence of beings apart from the forementioned, 3 of which were decisively proved through 3 clear impossibilities to be invalid and absurd, then necessarily and self-evidently the way of divine unity, which is the 4th way, is proved in a conclusive manner. The 4th way, In accordance with the verse quoted at the beginning, is there any doubt about God, creator of the heavens and the earth? Demonstrates clearly so that there can be no doubt or hesitation the divinity of the necessarily existent one, and that all things issue directly from the hand of his power, and that the heavens and the earth are under his sway. O you unfortunate worshipper of causes and nature, since the nature of each thing, like all things, is created, for it is full of art and is being constantly renewed. And like the effect, the apparent cause of each thing is also created. And since for each thing to exist there is need for much equipment and many tools, there must exist a possessor of absolute power who creates the nature and brings the cause into existence, and that absolutely powerful one is in no need of impotent intermediaries to share in his dominicality and creation. God forbid, he creates, God forbid, he creates cause and effect together directly, in order to demonstrate his wisdom and the manifestation of his names. By establishing an apparent causal relationship and connection through order and sequence, he makes causes and nature avail to the hand of his power, so that the apparent faults, severities, and defects in things should be ascribed to them, and in this way his dignity be preserved. So this was again some concluding remarks from that treatise, and I think it probably touches upon a few of the things that we have discussed, such as the part that Samet Abi has been talking about. But any final thoughts and insights onto this and this treatise together, and any maybe suggestions for our listeners, aside from, I guess, reading this for themselves? Samet Nabi, would you like to? Um,
Yeah, actually, just briefly,
sure.
as at the end of the paragraph, he said, so the nature and the cause and effect causes, I mean, this relationship that we apparently assume, they are necessary in order for us to understand, several attributes of the creator of all these. Apart from that, they have no, external reality depend on their own, and they have no value. So this is the only thing that I would like to share finally, and thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the contributions. Um, Colin Hocam, would you like to say anything about this part?
I can't really add anything to that. It's a big subject here because cause and effect being created directly means that there are no causes actually, there are only effects, and causality is apparent. And then the whole discussion of, occasionalism and God creating everything directly and continuously all the time, I think is a big issue. So it's difficult just to say one word on it. So I will say that what Hussamuddin said was enough for both of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And indeed, it is, they're all of these sentences could become different sessions, different, if we have to, things being renewed, all the cause and effect relationship, and why they are there in the universe. Does God need them? The answer is no, of course. And they're being, veils and for apparent, against complaints and things like that. So there are all these, as you said, facets to this, where we can cover, inshallah, in some future discussions, and all these, where angels are placed in all this equation, and and how they represent all these things in the universe, and all these things, and all our understanding is really are really deep topics. But again, this is, I guess, the method of Risale-i Nur, like it is a text that explains itself through different parts. So again, I really would like to encourage our audience seeing this as some sort of a preview to the treasure that is out there, and go and read for your own, because at the end of the day, without reading these truths from their sources, probably again and again, and maybe referring to different places, as we have seen here multiple times, other pieces from the Risale-i Nur has been taken to explain certain things in these parts. So, I encourage all of our listeners to read, first of all, like this part, the nature, cause or effect. This it's a booklet, and it's also a part of the Flashes collection. And with that, I'd like to, thank all our speakers. Colin Hocam, has been there for many weeks. Thank you very much for your sustained efforts there. And Brother Samettin and Brother Harun, they have been also contributing every other week, taking turns on looking at different aspects of the issue. And inshallah, this will be our final installation of the nature. Again, we will have another topic next week, a whole new topic, and and inshallah, we'll have another set of discussions. Samet Nabi, would you like to make a small dua for us before leaving?
Okay, I will. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين لله الفاتحة